Welcome to Viata's Tiny House Village. We've got a lot to talk about because we are still in boot camp here in the village, promoting peace, shalom, because war is hell. And I don't think anybody likes war. So let's say hi to my village family and then let's get busy with some drumming in the village while we go to Blog Talk Radio and more. So here we go.
Five, four, three,
All right, time to get your drums out. We are now live in Blog Talk Radio with Becca Shea. Becca Shea is a beautiful Christian artist who brings a rhythm of Native American drumming and a spirit of truth with the Yeshua HaMashiach. So let's drum in and invite our ancestors in. Hey! Bringing power through unity. Well, resurrection coming. Yeah, wake up, you sleeping giant. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Welcome, welcome everybody to Viada's Tiny House Village on YouTube and Blog Talk Radio Soul Purpose Healing, where we are here, and I mean we, my ancestors and I, my dad and I, he's an ancestor too. We're here to bring us back into alignment with the Creator's love, peace, compassion, and wisdom. So tonight's show topic came to me because I kept hearing the phrase exploitation of ignorance, ignoring the ant, that little insect of wisdom. And I thought, wow, that's a deep topic. I don't know if I can handle that, but I've been guided to upload all these great teachings about the conflicts in our life, the conflicts in the Middle East. And I want to share all that I learned in just the last 48 hours. It's just been amazing that all these things pour into my spirit, my mind, and then I go searching for confirmations, and they go boom, 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 boom. That song I just sang is about unity, and that's what the show is about tonight. Let us not lose focus that we are here to promote unity and shalom, peace. Shalom is a Hebrew word. It's just ironic that the people over there who speak it are not in shalom. But I grew up in the last 10 years, 20 years with shalom in my mouth and my heart. So I just got shalom in my heart, and I want to promote that especially now because there is so much ignorance that is being exploited. Let me just give you a definition of the word exploit. What exactly are we talking about tonight? It means make full use of and derive benefit from a resource, let's say. Use in an unfair or selfish way, that's exploit. Benefit unfairly from the work of someone else, typically over. So our definition is speaking to us, I believe, about making full use of ignorance and derive benefit from the ignorance. Now, what do we mean by that? Full use of ignorance, derive benefit from me. Who's deriving benefit from ignorance? Money, 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 money. Wouldn't you say? If you've ever been in business, if you understand the business world, capitalism, it's all about money, right? People everywhere, even social media, everybody's marketing themselves, doing things to make money, more money, 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 money. And what does scripture tell us? The love of money is the root of all evil. So I have begun to, in this conflict that we're witnessing in the Middle East, in Ukraine, all over, that it's the love of money, the greed, even that is being promoted in this battle, in this conflict. The love of money, greed, and then how do people profit from ignorance? Well, they tell lies. They tell a lot of lies, and those lies come in so many forms. And one of the forms, how they promote the lies, is through something called false flags. Let's start with false flags. That's a term that lots of people are ignorant about. And it's only my search and desire for more knowledge that I found out what false flags are about. In fact, there was a great documentary on Netflix about false flags. They removed that so quick. I don't know where it went, but it's gone because it revealed a truth that some people, some corporations don't want us to have. Okay. So that is why we want to bring you knowledge tonight, wisdom, because the ignorance is being exploited to kill and destroy. And I am just all about shalom. And there's nothing shalom about hearing about people, I don't care what side they're on, being killed and destroyed. It just saddens me. But this is the game that's played on planet Earth. And my job is to bring truth as I hear it, as I see it, and to share my experience from the heart in aligning us with love, compassion, and wisdom of our Creator. So I want to start with a little audio about false flags. How many of you, raise your hand? Raise your hand. Let me see who's in the Blog Talk Radio studio. How many of you know what a false flag is? If you know what a false flag is, raise your hand. And then I'll know what the level of understanding is in our family tonight. False flag? Any false flaggers? Okay, so let me keep moving. We're going to start that because the ignorance starts with the lies that are being told, and false flags is one of the very clear motivations going on right now in the conflict we're seeing develop in the media. The media is really, really good at promoting false flags. They just do an excellent job. They hire the actors, they put the green screens in their videos. You know, media companies, CBS, ABC, MSNBC, Fox News, they have the ability to create scenes on their cameras that make you think it's real. Yeah. And then that's where the exploitation comes, because if you're not aware of Hollywood drama and how they produce movies and how the media produces scenes to make you go into fear and anxiety and shock and all that, then that's where they're exploiting it. Because once again, follow the money. That's what we do. That's how we come out of ignorance, as we realize any situation that gets a lot of media. Right now, war is getting a lot of media attention. Oh my goodness, it's a new movie. War is the new movie. It's getting all kind of ratings. And so if we don't understand overstand the war movie that we're all watching, we're going to be exploited, taken full advantage of for what? Money, more war, and more suffering and sickness. So I'm here tonight to promote knowledge, truth, and not and love and compassion and wisdom. Knowledge, truth, and wisdom tonight. That's my goal. Knowledge, truth, and wisdom. Whatever you learn tonight, just keep in mind it's all about knowledge, truth, and wisdom. Now, if you want to comment or share your experience, press 1, as you know, in the Blog Talk Radio studio. If you're in Facebook, just make your comment here. I'm watching all these screens. And so I'll be ready to open your mic or respond to your comment. But this is important times, brothers and sisters. And I really mean that. All over the world are my brothers and sisters, because one of the biggest ignorance energies is that we are not all one. We are all one. We're all connected. I got friends in Israel, got friends in Palestine. I'm all one. That's why I got to do what I do to promote truth, to dispel the ignorance and stop this exploitation. No more exploitation. Please let us stop the exploitation. Let me one more time. Let me explain the definition of exploitation. Make full use of and derive benefit from, in this case, ignorance. Make full use of, which meaning make as much money as you can in this situation. And that's what we want to keep in mind. Somebody's making a lot of money off this war. Okay, that's what's happening. So false flags. Let's learn first and foremost, what is a false flag? If you missed the documentary that was on Netflix, this is a little summary for you about what false flags are. And this will move us forward into more knowledge, more wisdom, so we're no longer exploiting, and we come into the unity. That song we play at the beginning, unity. We come into the unity of promoting peace and telling our government officials to cease fire. We're not playing this game anymore. We don't want to play this game. We don't want to watch this movie anymore. This movie is old. Down, 2 thumbs down on this war movie we're watching. 2 thumbs down. So thumbs up on peace, promotion, and knowledge and wisdom. So let's start promoting peace with What is the hell is a false flag? Why does it matter? Okay, here we go.
Hi there, students.
Students.
A false flag as a noun, or very often as a modifier, a false flag attack, a false flag action. Okay, a false flag is where or a false flag action is where you pretend that something was done by somebody else. This is particularly a political or a military action that is made to appear to have been done by someone else. Yeah, so somebody gets the blame for it. So I do something, and somebody else gets the blame for it. I pinched the girl's bottom, and my friend got slapped in the face for it. Okay, that might be considered a false flag operation or a false flag attack. Okay, so a flag, it's a trick, a tactic where somebody thinks that or blames the wrong person for what has happened, or for something that's happened. Maybe you are and you do something, but everybody blames your enemy for it. That would be a false flag attack, to target with a false flag attack. Let's see, in the days of sail, when they had sails and sailing ships, a false flag attack would be you would fly the colours or the flags of your enemy until you were close enough to start firing. And then you changed your flag and started attacking. This used to be considered okay as long as you changed your flag to your real one before you started your attack. This was often used by pirates to get close. You would display the same flag as the vessel that is your target, and then when you get close, you quickly change flags and start attacking them. Okay, so false flag, false colours as well. Somebody could do something with false colours under a false flag. You're doing something with the intent of disguising who is actually responsible. You're trying to pin the blame on somebody else. It's a deliberate misrepresentation of who is responsible for something. I guess this could also be used to talk about motives, where you misrepresent your motives for doing something. So I think if something bad happens at the moment, the Americans want to blame either the North Koreans or the Chinese, perhaps. If you do something and somebody else gets the blame, that's a false flag operation. It's a secret operation that is designed to appear as if it's been carried out by somebody else. It can be very often difficult to prove exactly who has done something and who is directly responsible for it. So a false flag attack, to do something under a false flag. Your under is talking about you're flying that flag when you do it. Okay, let's see, formality. False flag attack. I think I'm going to give it a 6 in formality, but I think you could use it just about anywhere. A touch on the formal side. And the idea is, well, it was originally from ships that fly fly a different flag until they're in firing range, and then suddenly they start firing on you, having changed their flags. You don't know.
So that's a little description of false flag. That's the first step in coming out of the ignorance of the season that we're in. False flags, action done by someone else, blaming the enemy, and misrepresentation. So the ignorance that we have right now in the scene of war and conflict is that they did it, not us. They blaming what? Let's just say Hamas. Hamas is to blame. They're the villains. They're the terrorists, right? Okay. And so, who is responsible for this? Hamas, Hamas. Everybody's pointing fingers. Hamas, 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 right? So that is all the good reason for that we can exploit. Remember what happens when ignorance is exploited? If you believe that Hamas is guilty, Hamas is to blame, Hamas, 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 blame, 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 blame. Sounding like a narcissist, sort of. Okay, so if you believe that, you're in ignorance, okay? Because we're going to show you tonight why that's not true, okay? That we're seeing a false flag. The action that somebody, let's say the terrorist takes, the terrorist boom, 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 shoots up everybody, pretends that everybody exploits that and says, oh, look how horrible this is. We're going to look into that too. And the misrepresentation that they're to blame, narcissist here. Narcissist mind says, you're to blame. I'm not taking any responsibility. I didn't put any money into Hamas. I didn't create Hamas. I didn't do anything about him. Hamas is a terrorist that broke all possible defenses in my country. Even though I have the best defense in the world, they got through and they killed people and they murdered people and cut off babies' heads, blah, 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 blah. You're to blame. And the reality is I'm the narcissist if I'm feeling that way, okay? So what we're going to do is listen to Gabor Mate to start digging into this false flag reality that we're seeing. Blame, 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 narcissist, blame, 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 so that we can, again, promote peace and recognize who is the villain here and who needs to be brought down. Dr. Gabor Mate has this amazing testimony about his experience as a Jewish man in Palestine. I believe this is the most powerful testimony that will help us clearly see who is to blame or who is the villain. So I'm going to play Dr. Gabor Mate interview and listen to what he has to say about this Jewish man's perspective in Palestine.
I think anybody who sees it will be deeply moved by Gabor Mate's wisdom and truth.
But I'm personally a Holocaust survivor as an infant. I barely survived. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz, and most of my extended family was killed. I became a Zionist. This dream of the Jewish people resurrected in their historical homeland, and the barbed wire of Auschwitz being replaced by the boundaries of a Jewish state with a powerful army. And then I found out that it wasn't exactly like that. That in order to make this Jewish dream a reality, we had to visit a nightmare on the local population. And there's no way you could have ever created a Jewish state without oppressing and expelling the local population. Jewish Israeli historians have shown without a doubt that the expulsion of the Palestinians was persistent, it was pervasive, it was cruel, it was murderous, and with deliberate attempt. So that's what's called the Nakba in Arabic, the disaster or the catastrophe. There's a law that you cannot deny the Holocaust. But in Israel, you're not allowed to mention the Nakba, even though it was at the very basis of the foundation of the state. I visited the occupied territories, Russell, during the first Intifada. I cried every day for 2 weeks at what I saw. the brutality of the occupation, the petty harassment, the murderousness of it, or cutting down of Palestinian olive groves, the denial of water rights, the humiliations. And this went on, and it's much worse now than it was then. It's the longest ethnic cleansing operation in the 20th and 21st centuries. I could land in Tel Aviv tomorrow and demand citizenship under the law of the right of return. But my Palestinian friend in Vancouver, Hannah Kawas, who was born in Jerusalem, can't even visit. Now, if I have the right to return after 2,000 years, how come Hannah hasn't got the right to return after 70 years? So then you have these miserable people packed into this horrible, people call it the world's largest outdoor prison, which is what it is. You don't have to support Hamas policies to stand up for Palestinian rights. But that's a complete falsity. If you take the worst thing you can say about Hamas, multiply it by 1,000 times, and it still will not meet the Israeli repression and killing and dispossession of Palestinians. Anybody who criticizes Israel is an anti-Semite is simply an egregious attempt to intimidate good non-Jews who are willing to stand up for what is true. If you look at the Western press, when Hong Kong demonstrators throw stones at the police in Hong Kong, that's considered to be heroism. When in Myanmar, the demonstrators throw slingshots at the army, at the oppressive army, they're considered to be heroes in the Western press. When Palestinian kids throw stones at the Israeli soldiers, they're called terrorists. And Israel gets away with a lot more without much less criticism in the Western press than any other country. It runs a program for Palestinian children who spend time in Israeli jails. 14, 15, 16-year-olds are jailed for months or years. Sometimes they can't see their families for months. And she says, we don't have post-traumatic stress disorder here because the trauma is never post. The trauma is daily, she said. If he's got any ounce of humanity left, he would cry like I did for 2 weeks when I was there. Anybody can go on YouTube and listen to Ilan Pappé, an Israeli historian. Anybody can listen to Norman Finkelstein, a Jewish professor, world expert on Gaza, who was denied tenure at his university because of his public speaking against Israeli policy. You can listen to any number of Israeli Defense Forces soldiers who talk about the brutality that they now regret having committed. You can listen to Israeli pilots who talk about why they refuse to fly over Gaza because of the atrocities they're made to commit. You can get all the information you want. So if anybody these days doesn't know, it's not because the information is not available. And none of that excuses not knowing truth and this deliberate attempt to silence anybody who speaks, Jewish or non-Jewish. And I really wish that non-Jews of goodwill would stand up against the calumny and not be intimidated by this charge of anti-Semitism. I really wish that. It's not a question of being pro-Palestinian. It's a question of are you in favor of justice and liberty and freedom and truth, or are you not?
That is such a touching testimony of truth, that what's going on has been going on. As he said, it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, it's daily traumatic stress disorder in Palestine. And it's been going on for thousands of years, hundreds of years, however you want to. 1,000 times, he said. This is Gabor Mate speaking. It's not me speaking. It's what I'm hearing from Jewish individuals who have witnessed the terror, the horror, the Holocaust, the destruction in Palestine. 1,000 times worse than what we have seen or heard recently about the attack on Israel and Hamas. So how could this be that we are not in the streets protesting for a ceasefire and down with war and terror like this. How is it that we stand? Because we are complacent. We are compliant. In the United States, we got cars, we got food, we got roof over our head, we got food galore in the grocery store. Why should we be protesting that there's a Holocaust going on over there in Palestine? That it's just like South Africa, how they oppress the blacks. That's what's been going on in Palestine. But we have polarization going on in the media. Because even what's her name, Nikki Haley, you got to destroy Hamas. You must destroy Hamas. It's like, no, we need to get rid of you and all the politicians who are warmongering and war hawks to give more money to the war industrial complex. Okay, so we know what's going on. We're not stupid. And at the end of this show, you will not be stupid or ignorant anymore either, because ignorance is bliss. If I don't know what Dr. Gabor Mate just shared with me, I can go around in my Mercedes Benz and have my latte and my hamburgers and ribs and everything in the Estados Unidos, United States, and not think about it, right? I can't do that. I have to do something. And this is my, first of all, offering boot camp for peace. Until this war is over, I will be boot camping for peace, because I feel the suffering of the Palestinians more than I do the Israelis. It's not that they aren't suffering either, but who's causing this suffering? Let's get into that. We need to understand who is at the root of all this suffering in Israel. Okay, that's another ignorance we've got. Who actually started? Who created Hamas? Let's talk about that right now. How Israel helped create a Hamas. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of the lies and deception, and that's being exploited for all of us who are comfortable in our little home, in our big homes in the United States, doing absolutely nothing about the Holocaust going on in Palestine. All right. How Israel helped create Hamas?
The Palestinian militant group Hamas has carried out brutal acts of terror against Israeli civilians, and Israeli and American leaders are always keen to tell us how dangerous and evil Hamas is.
The inhumanity of Hamas. I have no sympathy for Hamas.
That keep shelling Israel with thousands of rockets and mortar shells.
What if I told you that Israel helped create Hamas? Officially, Hamas, which is the acronym for an Arabic phrase meaning Islamic Resistance Movement, was founded in 1987 at the start of the first Palestinian Intifada, or uprising against the Israeli occupation. But its roots were planted much earlier. The Hamas founder, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, was a half-blind, disabled Palestinian cleric and member of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Brotherhood had been repressed by the Egyptians in Gaza prior to 1967. But once the Israelis invaded and occupied the Strip, they didn't just turn a blind eye to these Islamists, they encouraged them. See, the Israelis, especially right-wing Israelis, wanted to undermine the power of the dominant Palestinian political force at that time, the nationalist PLO, at the heart of which was the secular Fatah party of Yasser Arafat, their bête noire. By empowering Sheikh Yassin and the Muslim Brotherhood, Israeli leaders thought they could divide and rule the occupied Palestinians, play them off against each other, secular nationalists against religious Islamists. So in 1978, when Yassin wanted to officially register his Islamic Association, which was basically the precursor to Hamas, the Israelis were only too keen to help. Yassin built and grew a network of Islamist social institutions across Gaza, including schools and clubs and mosques, and Israel helped fund some of those projects. Most American politicians have no clue about any of this, although the former Republican Congressman Ron Paul once made this point on the floor of the House.
Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat.
Arafat himself told an Italian newspaper, quote, Hamas is a creature of Israel. He even claimed that former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin admitted as much to him, calling it a fatal error. Now, you might be wondering, why should I believe mad Ron Paul or the famously shady Yasser Arafat? Well, you don't have to. You can believe top Israeli and US officials who've basically owned up to all this. Brigadier Yitzhak Segev, for example, who is the Israeli military governor in Gaza, and later told a New York Times reporter that he helped finance the Islamic movement. The Israeli government gave me a budget, he said, and the military government gives to the mosques. Hakam, who worked in Gaza in the late 1980s as an Arab affairs expert in the Israeli military, has admitted that the original sin was Israeli support for Yassin in the late 70s. But at the time, he has argued, nobody thought about the possible results. Well, Avner Cohen did. Cohen was the Israeli official who was responsible for religious affairs in Gaza for more than 2 decades, and who now says, quote, Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation. Yeah, Cohen's words. He actually wrote an official report to his superiors in the mid-1980s, warning them not to play divide and rule in the occupied territories and calling on Israel to, quote, break up this monster before this reality jumps in our face. But no one else on the Israeli side really took the possibility of blowback seriously at that time. They never do they? Hamas has since killed far more Israeli civilians than any secular Palestinian militant group, and its leaders have been pretty viciously anti-Israeli and even anti-Semitic in their rhetoric.
لن نعترف بإسرائيل. لا مكان لكم بيننا ولا مستقبل لكم بين الأمم. إنكم إلى زوال.
Sheikh Yassin would eventually be assassinated by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza.
Sheikh Yassin and its organization, the Hamas, are responsible to the killings of more than 400 Israelis. So the question shouldn't be why now. I think it should be why not before.
Why not before? Well, because before, Israel was actually nudging and winking at Yassin and co., building them up as a rival to Arafat's Fatah. The die was cast for blowback. Blowback, incidentally, that they decided to double down on when they assassinated Yassin.
You can hear the crowd chanting for Hamas, and any idea that this operation would actually suppress or diminish that organization seems to be ill-judged.
The inconvenient truth is that Hamas is in part a creature of Israel's own making, an enemy that Israel spent more than 20 years helping to build up, and then spent the next 20 years, the past 20 years that is, trying to bomb, besiege, and blockade out of existence. The 3 Gaza wars fought by Israel against Hamas since 2008 killed around 2,000 Palestinian civilians and a dozen Israeli civilians. That's the real human cost of blowback. David Long, a former Middle East expert at the US State Department under Ronald Reagan, told journalist Robert Dreyfus, I thought the Israelis were playing with fire. I didn't realize they'd end up creating a monster. But I don't think you ought to mess around with potential fanatics. It's a lesson both the Israelis and the Americans never seem to learn, though. And as usual, innocent people, in this case Palestinians and Israelis, continue to lose their lives as a result.
Okay, so we're going to get into more of the, and I'm so glad Craig's in the studio, in the Facebook. Thank you, Craig, for joining us. Because even I don't want you to believe anything you hear tonight. This is just a little bit of crumbs for you to do your own research. Because I collected all this information for the simple idea of helping all of us realize the level of ignorance that we're at and how it's being exploited. Because what have we heard? And if that what you heard is true, and we're not saying it's 100% guarantee. In fact, we're going to go to a break and we're going to learn more because Craig's making some great comments and I want to hear what he said because everybody might hear it differently. But the key thing is the media is using your ignorance to exploit in big ways that Hamas is a terrorist. We need to bomb the hell out of Palestinians, the territory, and get rid of all the buildings and kill the people and continue the Holocaust and the apartheid situation that they created, as Gabor Mate said, that caused him to cry for 2 weeks. And when he saw what was going on in Palestine, it made him cry for 2 weeks. And he's a Jew. So that's why we're here tonight. We want those of you who have no knowledge of what we just talked about. We just talked about false flags, in case you missed it. What is a false flag? It's an action done by someone else to blame the enemy and misrepresent who's responsible. So imagine I'm Israel, the narcissist, and I'm going to blame Hamas, even though I created them. They did it. And now we must destroy them. And this is how narcissists work in general. You know, it's not my fault. I'm going to destroy you by my criticism, by my shame you. This is so real in life that it's like almost hard to ironic that we're talking about blame, narcissism, and yet we're talking about a war where I'm the one who's the taking the action to blame you, blame, and yet I'm the narcissist. So we want to come out of that, because we got politicians saying we need to destroy Hamas, blah, 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 blah. And this is how they exploit the war machine. And what is it? It's all about the Benjamins, baby. Let me just show some comments, and then we're going to go to the break. Naima's waiting and ready for commercials. And our brother Craig says it all begins with the infiltration of Israeli politics by the refugees from out of Europe in 1947 into Israel and Palestine, who accepted them with open arms. Yes, it was then that destabilized 250 years of peace between true Israelis and Palestinians. Thank you, Craig, for bringing in that European influence. They always have something to do with it as far as, and then the PLO didn't even exist in 1947, but they rose after European refugees arrived. Thank you, Craig. True, I believe true. Recently, a former Israeli general called his own people the new Nazis. Thank you, Craig. We bring on the truth, people. We got to dispel this ignorance tonight. It's like I talk to people and they didn't know that, but yet, we got to destroy the Hamas. No, we don't do that. We're not polarizing. We're in a boot camp for peace. No polarization. We speak in truth and peace. And it means accepting the reality that we got a lot of psychopaths running governments and a lot of false flags. Got to recognize these false flags, and money as the motive for these false flags, because military corporations getting out big time last week. Money's rolling in, and the United States is part of the problem. In fact, some people say the United States is the biggest terrorist in the world. When you look at the history, I don't think that's too far from true. We're going to take a break right now. Let's see, where's Naima? I'm going to open up Naima's mic, and we're going to take a break and come back with more information, more truth to dispel this ignorance. Thank you, Naima. Welcome to Soul Purpose Healing.
Do you want to live in a world without war? Join our global peace movement. Heavenly Culture World Peace Restoration of Light transcends culture, religion, ideology, and other boundaries to achieve peaceful harmony in the global society. HWPL is committed to bringing world peace and cessation of war through peaceful dialogue between religious groups. I am Director Shin-Suk Kim of the HWPL Chicago branch of North America. Join us for our next gathering. Call 773-580-1501 and be a part of the movement for world peace. Email us at chicagohwpl@gmail.com.
Hi, this is John Alexander.
And I'm Naima Latif. Meet people like you who are making a positive difference in the world.
Big difference. Watch us every day on The Media Connection at www.youtube.com/TheMediaConnectionTV.
YouTube it. We'll see you soon.
There are people who choose to make a positive difference in the world. Our job is to bring you their stories to motivate you to do the same. Join us each week, host John Alexander and Naima Latif, as we bring you the educators, entertainers, elected officials, religious leaders, and community activists whose works are transforming this world. Find out how you can make a difference too. Be inspired. Watch The Media Connection. Mondays at 5 p.m. and Tuesdays at 12 noon on cable TV, Channel 19 in Chicago. And other cities, check your local cable listing. I'm Beata, your holistic life coach. These days, it's more important than ever to work on your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Are you consciously breathing deeply in stressful moments? Do you have a plan or daily routine to maintain balance in your awesome body? Are you struggling to be disciplined in your eating habits? When you partner with me, I'll help you develop a personalized health plan that works for your particular lifestyle. You can find out more about me at yourholisticlifecoach.com, where you can also review my 3-step protocol to guide you to abundant health. That's yourholisticlifecoach.com, and I'm Beata.
All right, we are back. Thank you so much for joining me. What happens when ignorance is exploited? Military makes a bunch of money is what happens, because they create wars. And we talked about false flags, which are these actions that governments create events that they can blame other people and not realize that they're the narcissists, and they created the whole situation, like Hamas. And as Craig informed us, there's more to the Hamas story than you can even find out. But before we've got a caller, 321. I'm coming right next to you. But before we go to the caller, I want to give you an example of how the media produces false flags. I see now so clearly when we have people acting, they have hired, when you have a false flag, they hire, who is they? The governments, the perpetrators, the people who are promoting Hamas. They hire actors to fan the flames of fear, anxiety, sadness, grief, to support their cause. We got to kill Hamas. We got to destroy Hamas. So here's a really good example of one I watch, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's terrible acting. Okay, this woman is describing how she was hiding. And lately, we got some real good Hollywood drama going on, where actors are coming out of the woodworks, being filmed. They got bandages on them, and they've got a sad story, and they're going to look really sad. They're going to try to look really sad, but these days the acting is really bad. But I want to pull up this on the screen so you can see for yourself whether this woman is convincing to you. This is Israel woman describes hiding, and the media, how the media exploits this stuff. It's just really interesting. And to me, and then when you have one of the CNN commentators narrating the whole thing, it's like they both got their script, and we're supposed to just believe everything we see because it makes us have sympathy for the person, the underdog, right? So here, let's everybody take a look at this woman who's describing whatever.
Avital, can you just walk us through what happened when your home was attacked?
Yes. We were hiding in the shelter. Chaim Katzman, who is a friend of mine, living next to me, and me, we were hiding in the closet. And then the terrorists came and they bombed the door, the bullets, and they all entered into Chaim Katzman's body. So I was saved thanks to him. And then they pulled me out of the closet. They told me to cover myself. So I just took 3 skirts and put them on me, one on my legs, one on my shoulders, and one on my head. And then they took me to my living room.
So the person you were with in the closet was shot.
Uh-oh, she missed her script. She messed up. Yes. He had to correct her.
And you were shot as well?
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
I wasn't. I was saved because he was next to the door and they shot him and they saved him. I don't know why. They just took me out of there and I was saved. He absorbed all the bullets into his body. And when I went out, I saw him dead.
They took you to the living room.
Oh, needs a little help there, sugar.
Then came more terrorists with the children of my friend Adi, she is still missing. They gave me Eshe, he is 4.5 months old, and Negev, who is almost 4 years old, both traumatized. And they just gave them to me. And from there, they took me to another home. There was a family in the shelter, and they tried to convince them to go out of the shelter, and they told me what to tell them in order to come out. Thankfully, they did not listen, not to me, not to the terrorists, obviously.
And these children, they must have been terrified. Were they crying?
Yeah,
were they silent? I mean, this is.
They were traumatized. They were shocked. Negev had a bullet that crossed his foot, and Eshel, the baby, he was breathing so much gunfire, and his lungs were absorbing so much. Yeah, both of them were traumatized, and they were just quiet. They kept, gazing at the terrorist with terrified eyes. From there, at a certain...
You're talking about a 5-year-old child and a 4.5-month-old child.
A almost 4 years old child, and a 4.5 month, almost 5 months baby who is still breastfeeding. His mother is missing. They're gorgeous kids of my dear friend who is still missing. I knew that my life is going to change, but I didn't care. I just looked at the kids all the time to see what's going on with them, and that's it. And then we crossed the border, and we were about 2 kilometers from Gaza. I already saw the houses, and then they told me to go. They released us.
Do you know why?
I don't know why. Everyone is asking me that. I really don't know why. I don't know. I thank God for that, but I don't know why they saved the kids' life and my life. They just told me to go.
Okay, so that was to me a very good example of how false flags work. As you see, he had to coach her. You forgot your lines, honey. This has been going, and some people don't see that at all. I understand if you don't see the acting there and how he's coaching her. Is that and using words like, "Oh, he was trying." And how do you know that he absorbed all the bullets, honey? I mean, is she a professional? She's not a doctor. She's not, but she's got her line. Oh, he absorbed all the bullets. He was dead. And then the 4.5 months old and the 4 were terrified, and drama. That's what you see more and more now in this war production. So let's go to the phones. I have a hand up, and this is what happens when you don't recognize the production that goes on to convince you that Hamas needs to be destroyed, even though the ethnic cleansing is 1,000 times worse in Palestine, but they need to be destroyed over there so that we can make more money off this whole thing. Let's go to the phones. 321-368. Your mic is open. Welcome.
Thank you. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
I thought about kind of backing out of the queue because I didn't know if what I had to say was really necessary for the program. But it's a great program and well needed because there's so much ignorance, and this awareness needs to be made available to I'll say the people at large. But I was just thinking about a couple of things relative to the program. I was thinking about when you study the history of Esau and how.
I'm sorry, the study
Esau,
of who? What did you say?
I said when you study the history of Esau and you see that Esau actually made it and intermarried with all the peoples over there, of the different nations, so that Esau could work from the inside and consequently not be identified as a false flag, because if you enter into a group that way, you can look like the people that you're around, but yet you're not with them. You're not a part of them because you have a different ideology. And from what I understand, and various references that I've checked, this is what's going on. You have people that are of the same descendancy on both sides.
Okay, so I believe let me just ask you a question. I believe you're talking about biblical history, but a lot of people may not know who Esau. Can you kind of give a brief description of who Esau is? Because I don't know Esau, if all our audience is Christian.
Esau was a child of Abraham, a son of Jacob.
Okay.
And and he hated his brother.
Okay.
He wanted to kill his brother.
Okay.
So basically, when you check that history over there, it's about the land, it's about possession, and so you have this determination to get rid of my brother so that I can take what he has that I believe that is owed to me.
Right.
But another aspect that I was thinking about as I listened to the program, I taught at a reform school, and in this reform school, like in a typical day in class, the students' age ranged from 11 to 21. So I could have in my classroom a child as young as 11 who was in reform school, and an adult 21 in that same class. So I had to vary my teaching to fit the various age groups there. But my point is this: that school allowed the Crips and the Bloods to flourish there. Actually, the school provided the colors. There was like a deep red maroon, and there was a blue. And I'm saying this to say this: those young people, they looked at false flagging as a very serious offense, and actually, it was worthy of death. I think, if I recall right, I had to break up at least one fight where this one kid was trying to kill this other kid, and they normally are inspected for like what they call contraband, because they have the school was divided into one side where they go just like they're incarcerated. Then they come through a corridor over to the school part during the day, and we teach them there, and then they go back in the evening. But this one kid, he was really upset, and I've had seen different ones who were upset about false flaggers. In other words, if you're not a part of their particular group, if you're not a part of the Crips or the Blood, you do not wear those colors. Well, there were some students new students that were coming in and somehow getting that particular uniform, and so that person was considered a false flagger. And so really what they would try to do is gang up on that person and beat them up or whatever, and let them know you don't wear that. And in that city, there was a lot of that going on. Outside of that school, there were gangs, and if you wore the particular, even it was a jacket they used to call this jacket Max Julia, and it was a beautiful jacket, leather jacket with a fur collar. And if you weren't in that group, you better not wear that. You could go to the store and buy it, but if you wore it and you weren't in that group and they saw you with it, they would beat you down and take that away from you because you were false flagging. And sometimes even they would even kill people. Some people were killed because they were false flagging. And so I wanted to say that false flagging is serious. You have a lot of people that will just kind of like what you were just showing in this last audio. People that are, for some reason, they're paid to infiltrate, put on the uniform or whatever, organization that they're infiltrating, so they will look like those people, but yet they're false flagging. And with that, I'm shutting up. I'm through.
Well, I thank you and appreciate that you bring in not only the biblical relevance and history of that region. Of course, we all know the Middle East is just full of history that the Bible talks about, and then to bring it home to modern day gangs. In fact, thank you so much. That was Mikael in Melbourne. And in fact, you could look at Israel as a modern day bully. They're bullies, just like the United States government. The people, I love the people of Israel. I love the people of Palestine. I love the people in the United States, but the government sucks. Let's just admit it. The government sucks. And Craig brings more truth, more light to the subject. This is a rabbit hole we're going down tonight, brothers and sisters. So don't take anything for truth or valid. Do your research. I hope, as Mikael pointed out, false flags are serious. They're worthy of death and torture. We should be calling for the death of those who are promoting these false flags. The death of this government, the death of the Israel government. Israel is over there. If you really look into this situation, this government is killing their own people. Okay? And now they want to destroy the Palestinians and take their land and more, just destroy everything. These people are worthy. They're the ones where the government is worthy of death. Shoot them up. That's what they want to say. But let's just bring some sanity to the whole thing. I don't know how that's going to happen. It's going to require divine intervention. But our brother Craig points out here that, can you imagine politicians and survivors of the Holocaust taking political office? Yeah. And the trauma being played out amongst cabinet members and what that would bring about. And I'd like to further add that the Nazi Party was funded by British Talmudic Jews of Britain and America to wipe out economic competition on the world stage, because the Hungarian and wealthy Polish Jews refused to ally themselves with the Jews of Britain and America. Just like kids playing in the sandbox. They just can't get along. all this conflict that just tells us the more we learn and come out of ignorance, it just tells us the solution is not more bombs. The solution is not more killing. The solution is not more suffering. The solution is freedom, freedom for all the people in Palestine and Israel from these psychopathic, narcissistic, maniac governments and the corporations that are driving them to death and destruction and greed, and the corporations that are all about the money, all about the money. So I have another example I want to play for you until I hear from my executive producer. There was a story going around, just another example of false flags, a story going around about 40 beheaded babies. And I saw this video about how the media amplified 40 beheaded babies without even verifying. Now, tell me who's counting 40 beheaded babies, first of all. You look at these types of reports, and we've got to ask questions. Why and how they put these stories out? What's the motive? Well, the motive is fear, anger, anxiety, more lies, more reason to bomb, and on and on and on. So I want you to just listen to this guy break down the ridiculousness of reporting about 40 beheaded babies. We're not going to see it. Don't worry. No, we're not showing any. And how they blew this story up and made it a big deal, and it wasn't even verified by anyone at any time. And yet this was the story that was out. This is just an example again of how they blow this stuff up and create ignorant and oh, that's so horrible. We need to destroy Hamas. They're beheading babies. And yet they really didn't even verify this story. So we're going to hear this brother break it down, break down the truth.
Here's how unverified information can change the landscape of a war and pave the way for horrific outcomes. You've likely seen the headlines about 40 babies being beheaded by Hamas fighters in the Kfar Aza village in southern Israel. It's hard to miss. It's everywhere. It's been carried by a number of reputable news outlets, repeated on live TV by powerful political figures, and featured on the front cover of British newspapers. The only problem is there's so far no proof to the story, but it hasn't stopped a spiraling and dizzying loop of hysteria from dominating the news cycle over the last few days. So how did it spread? And what is it being used to justify? This story was first reported by the Israeli news outlet I-24 on Tuesday. During an on-the-ground report in the kibbutz of Kfar Aza, an Israeli reporter first mentions the incident.
David, it's hard to even explain exactly just the mass casualties that happened right here. In fact, the Israeli military says they still don't have a clear number, but I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed as they've been walking through these different houses, these different communities, babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said.
Nicole Zedek later clarified that the claim came from one of the Israeli commanders she spoke to.
We walk door after door. We kill a lot of the terrorists. We are stronger than them. They are aggressive. They are very bad. They cut head of children, cut head of women. But we are stronger than them.
The claim was immediately picked up by other reporters. It was repeated on the front page of the Times newspaper by reporter Anshel Pfeffer, featuring in the headline in quote marks. But in the story itself, there are no quotes that back up the story. Instead, Pfeffer writes some soldiers said there were up to 40 babies' corpses found, and that there were claims that some had their throats cut. But no one is named as having said the quote, and the reporter, despite being on the ground as bodies were being excavated, doesn't claim to have seen this himself. It's also repeated on the front pages of The Independent, Metro, The Telegraph, and The Sun. All of them cite Nicole Zedek's report, but cannot verify it themselves. By Wednesday, questions around the accuracy of the story begin to surface, particularly after a report by Anadolu Agency cites the IDF saying they had not confirmed the allegations. A number of reporters who ran the story then begin to walk it back, saying they were simply repeating what they had heard from soldiers and from the I-24 story. By the evening, the story had changed again, with CNN announcing they had confirmed it with Israeli Prime Minister's office.
We have some really disturbing new information out of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
No, we had been hearing reports that this had happened, but now we are getting this confirmed directly from the Israeli Prime Minister's office.
But that seemed to have been picked up from an interview between Tal Heinrich, the spokesperson from Benjamin Netanyahu, with LBC, where she cites the same source as the initial story, soldiers on the ground.
When you listed the unconscionable atrocities that took place in that kibbutz, you did say that babies had been decapitated. Can I take that as confirmation then? Because that currently is being reported as reported action. That has actually happened as it
Toddlers, babies, I can tell you that they, some of them, heads were cut off. This is what we're hearing from soldiers on the ground, and yes, they cut off heads. They cut off heads.
Then on Wednesday evening, the U.S. president repeated the claim during a live broadcast, saying he had seen the pictures himself.
I've been doing this a long time. I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. I never thought I'd ever. Anyway.
That was picked up by almost every U.S. media outlet, who ran the story as having finally been confirmed. Then, the White House retracted the statement, telling media Biden and other U.S. officials have not seen pictures or confirmed such reports independently. The U.S. president's remarks were based on media reports and claims made by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's spokesperson. An IDF spokesperson then tells Sky News Australia that the story has been verified and cites two sources who spoke to the media.
I can tell you that it's been verified firsthand by a senior official in our coronary service. And there's a senior person who was identified on record. I think he was on CBS News, personally testified to the fact that he indeed saw the heads of severed babies. And I know that the Israeli Prime Minister's office has also corroborated the news. I, of course, haven't seen the atrocity myself, but I think those two sources enough.
But when Sky News interviewed two IDF spokespeople on the ground at Kfar Aza, neither of them mentions the claims, despite speaking in detail about the civilian deaths in the village. When Business Insider tried to press the IDF for proof, spokesperson Major Nir Dinar responded, saying the IDF would not investigate the condition of the bodies. Quote, "The war crimes that Hamas committed are obvious to the world and are seen in the world. And I don't need to provide any proof of that, and I'm not going to," Dinar said. "It's disrespectful for the dead." When pressed further, he said the IDF were relying on testimonies from soldiers, pointing to the same video originally aired by I-24. Back to square one. Until today, no conclusive official statement has been released by Netanyahu's office, the IDF, or the coroner's office, shutting down the skepticism around the reports once and for all. It is a horrific circular debate unlikely to be resolved soon. But the conduct of the media must be scrutinized because there are real consequences. To be clear, all the reporting from the ground in places like Kfar Aza indicates hundreds of civilians were killed, and the details are gruesome and hard to comprehend. However, there is always a need for accuracy, specifically in times of war. What Hamas is accused of could potentially amount to war crimes, which means there is a procedure in place for collecting evidence, documenting eyewitness testimony, and verifying each and every claim. When this isn't done, it feeds into a cycle of violent escalation, and in the worst times, justifies the horrific collective punishment of civilians we are now witnessing in Gaza by Israel's army.
A siege is appropriate, cutting off power, cutting off water.
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation.
Do you think cutting off food, water and electricity is within international law?
I think that Israel has an absolute right to defend itself against
not
terrorism.
the question I asked.
It is an answer to the question that you've asked, and I think it's an appropriate one at this time.
Hamas is a bunch of animals who deserve to be treated like animals.
Which they know is going to result in a massive reprisal, and a right, justified, completely supported by the West reprisal.
We are unequivocally in support of the state of Israel.
as they deal with that threat, and they have the absolute right to defend themselves.
It isn't about semantics, the minute details of what did or didn't happen. It's about how stories like this one are being used to silence the criticism of Israel's response in Gaza. The cutting off of water, electricity, and food to more than 2 million people, the relentless and indiscriminate shelling of entire neighborhoods, infrastructure, border crossings, shelters, schools. At least 20 families have been extinguished. Thousands more are farewelling each other and preparing to die, knowing there is no way out. This is what is happening right now. Whenever these realities are put to officials, they rebut them by citing the news reports, the ones that haven't been properly verified, but whose impact have already dominated this war.
Hundreds of children have died. There's a blockade of fuel.
We actually lost 1,200 people that murder. We are living close to monsters, to inhuman people. And we are fighting for our home, and we will win.
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? Have you not seen what happened? We're fighting Nazis.
Israel's army has a history of strategic use of unconfirmed reports. In 2021, during the 10-day bombing raid of Gaza, a number of news organizations, including the New York Times, published a report of a ground invasion of Gaza by Israel, citing an IDF tweet. But that wasn't true. A few hours later, the IDF clarified it had been a miscommunication, but it wasn't. Israeli news reports later described it as a ruse by the IDF to trick Hamas into giving up their positions. And they knew that international media would amplify the statement. Last year, when veteran Palestinian reporter Shireen Abu Akleh was killed while covering an Israeli raid on the city of Jenin, IDF accounts published videos of Palestinian militants claiming that they had likely killed her. That report was picked up by international media. It was false. We investigated the incident and concluded, along with other media outlets, that Israeli snipers had killed her, something the IDF later conceded. In Bob Woodward's book, Rage, the American journalist describes an incident from 2017 where Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly shows Donald Trump a video of the Palestinian president Mahmoud Abbas ordering the killing of children. However, after the meeting, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson tells Trump he believes the video was doctored. Just this week, another instance of unverified footage being released and shared by government sources. The video claims to show a police interrogation of a Hamas militant admitting to the rape of women and children. On Wednesday, it was published and shared by multiple Israeli government accounts, including by a foreign ministry spokesperson. Then it was deleted. But not before it had spread like wildfire across social media. Despite this repeating pattern, many journalists continue to take information fed by Israeli soldiers as fact. And when these misleading reports become headlines, it allows Israeli officials to shut down public debate about its military protocols, especially those in clear breach of international law. This is how misinformation spreads in times of war. It is how armies and governments can seek to manipulate media to alter public perception. And when journalists don't fulfill their obligations to rigorously fact-check claims before they publish them, it leads to disastrous consequences. Here's an example. In October 1990, a Kuwaiti teenager spoke before U.S. Congress, revealing a horrifying testimony that during Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, she had personally witnessed Iraqi soldiers taking babies out of incubators at hospitals and leaving them to die. The story became headline news. It was corroborated by Amnesty International. It was cited publicly by U.S. President George H.W. Bush and used to rally Congress to support a military intervention against Iraq. The thing is, the story wasn't true. The teenager who spoke in Congress was later identified as Naira al-Sabah, the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador, and that her story was written by a public relations campaign lobbying for military intervention. When the Gulf War did begin, the crippling sanctions imposed on Iraq and the military tactics of U.S. and allied forces were defended by citing these and other reports that highlighted the barbarity of Iraqi soldiers. In February 1991, coalition forces bombed an Iraqi convoy that was retreating from Kuwait near the city of Al-Jahra. Hundreds of vehicles were destroyed, with almost all of the occupants inside killed. For years, this strip of road was known as the Highway of Death. In the lead up to the Second Gulf War, journalists repeated the same mistake, taking the U.S. government's claims of weapons of mass destruction held in Iraq at face value, allowing them to be used as justification for the invasion and occupation of Iraq. Again, as we now know, there was never any evidence. But by the time the truth came to light, more than 1 million Iraqis were dead, more than 5 million children orphaned, and an entire region permanently destabilized. Headline.
Okay, I think we get the message. I hope we get the message that this is how false flags operate, with false information from the media. Even hiring a public relations firm to write the script. Take note, when all the major media, CBS, NBC, CBS, MSN are reporting the same story over and over, 40 babies' heads decapitated, you ought to know right away, red flag, bullshit. Because this is how they operate. And they've been doing it for so long, and yet the ignorance is out there. That's why we're doing this show tonight. To just bring out some of the obvious things that I see, but other people may not see. And then they go along with it. And then you have your president, President Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Brandon saying the same script, telling the lie. Oh, I witnessed all the babies, the dead babies. This show is ridiculous. Twilight Zone, whatever. Let's take a break. If you have any questions or comments, press 1 if you're in the Blog Talk Radio studio. We're going to take a break and come back. I have more information to share, but I'll gladly share your voice if you'd like to share something about your experience in viewing all this BS that is exploiting the ignorance, giving more fuel for the military to go to war, make more money, and shed more blood. This is the reality we live in, folks, but I'm not going to sit back and just say, oh, peace and love, peace and love, peace and love, peace and love. No, we got to do more than that now. It's time to raise your voice and say, no, we've had enough, especially the United States citizens. You're too compliant. You're too complacent. Because we are the worst, not we, our government is the worst terrorists. And guess what? The blood is on our hands if we don't speak up. That's what's happening today. Too much bloodshed. We're going to open up the mic once again for our executive producer, and then we'll be right back and take your questions and comments of truth, love, and wisdom. Tonight, no more ignorance. We don't want in the military industrial complex exploiting any more ignorance. We're ending that. Campaign now is Boot Camp for Peace. That's the name of it, Boot Camp for Peace. First step, no more ignorance. Let's learn as much as we can about the game of false flags that they're playing and more. So, Naima Latif, your mic's open. If you want to give us more commercials, we are ready.
Also, after the break, we need to take a caller, 314-677 on this line. So you can go to a caller after the break.
Okay, thank you. Thank us.
So, all righty. Thank us.
Have you ever dreamed of going to exotic places, meeting fascinating people, enjoying uplifting music, and spending nights in a luxurious hotel? Do you look forward to a relaxing vacation where you can walk along the beach or sit in a quiet park and enjoy the sunset or sunrise? Whether you're flying around the world or driving across the country, we will share travel tips that will help you stay safe while you enjoy the journey. Join me every third Saturday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time,
and move around with Deborah here on the Female Solutions Show. Call in and comment 515-605-9325 and press 1 to speak.
Tune in to Soulful Solutions with Dr. Debbie Green on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time and 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear great topics and stories on grief and turn it into victory. Join Dr. Debbie Green to listen to stories of triumph and learn how to overcome. You are not alone in your life, and there is hope in the darkest hour. This is your time to learn strategies and solutions to improve your life. It's your time. So join Dr. Debbie Green with Soulful Solutions and call in on Thursday at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time and 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at 515-605-9325 with comments and questions. Look to hear from you real soon.
Is Monday morning a struggle to get out of bed into the swing of things? Well, don't worry, you are not alone. Join us for thought-provoking, stimulating, and mindful conversations on higher learning with Zelda Speaks for your Monday morning mindfulness session on Blog Talk Radio, The Female Solution, Mondays, 7:30 until 9 a.m. Be sure and send your ideas, thoughts, comments, and suggestions. Also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit ZeldaSpeaks.com and send us your info. We'd love to have you. Experience mindfulness moments with the mindfulness/stress relief coach, Zelda Speaks. And thanks for sharing the mindfulness moment tip of the day. Stay on purpose, stay empowered, and stay tuned to your next session of mindfulness on higher learning with Zelda Speaks. Make it a mindful day. And thanks for listening.
And we're back, and we have a caller in the Female Solutions studio. So welcome, caller. And then we have a caller here in the Soul Purpose Healing 706. You're next.
It's Bianchi.
Bianchi, welcome.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Look, I wish Naima would bring up a YouTube video on Helen Thomas. It's about 26 seconds long, and it's Helen Thomas, a Gaff, and she tells a story. But this nation, I ain't gonna say this name. These people that's over there in Palestine, occupying Palestine, with these pretenses about they was promised the land is a bunch of bull crap. And they, when they done the lift of the Better Israel from Gondor, and they brought 3 loads of them back, well, they made all the males to be recircumcised. And also, Ethiopian women that was coming there, you could say they forcefully sterilized them or gave them medicine that would sterilize them. Why is that?
Who is they?
Well, same reason why come Israeli government.
Okay.
President Israeli government.
Thank you.
These people are not from there. There was no white skin from there. As NASA, the president of NASA told Menachem Begin that you left pure black and you came back white. Something's wrong with that.
Okay.
But they sterilized those women. The same pretense that Ruth Bader Ginsburg made reference in an interview called The Women on the Court. And she said at the time of the Roe decision, there was concerns about too many people. It was concerns about people that we didn't want too many of. And she said that. It's an interview. So that's the things that's going on there. Israeli women the ones that came there, the ones that came from Poland and Germany in America, they are not having babies. And when they say that Americans are being held hostage, well, those people have dual citizenship. So why come they ain't say that Israelis are being held hostage? You can't get a dual citizenship with a Nigeria. You can't get a dual citizenship with a Jamaica. They don't recognize it. And that's the way it is. They were not. Palestine has existed, always existed, long before there. And people know that it was coming out of the League of Nations in 1948. You know who architected that whole deal? It was a black man by the name of Bunch. Bunche, Bunch. He was the architect for the League of Nations. Ralph Bunche. All this can be verified. So the thing is and how you going to wage? You can't wage war on an ideology, because Hamas is not a country. It's an ideology. It's people that blend in with the rest of the crowd. It's the way they did with ISIS, the way they do with the Taliban. They blend in with the rest of the crowd. They are not government. You never will defeat that. It's based now on just a matter of time. And the people want their land back. Not no two-state solution. They want their land back. And given the history of their notorious things that they do, you know, you had some blacks leave out of Chicago back in the 70s. Ben Carter. They went to Liberia and stayed for a while. And then they recouped themselves and went on into Israel, into what's called Dimona. And they there now. They developed the area. They developed a economy and also developed a agriculture system. Ben Amin was his name. And the Israeli government did not want to recognize it. And the FBI had them on a terrorist list, along with some others, including the Nation of Islam. Then he came along later and apologized. So that's what it has to be looked like. Look at like what it is. It wasn't no person ever lived named Abraham. Do the research. And of course, none of those other ones. So that's my 3 cents that I add to it. If you want any more, ask me. I'll be around.
So what is your solution to this conflict right now going on? What would you say in a couple of sentences a solution to the conflict in the Middle East right now?
America, United States need to leave these countries alone. You need to attend to the problems that we have in this nation. You got kids that can't read and write in the urban areas. You got people sleeping under bridges. You got fuel costs that's high as heck. You got runaway inflation. You got a debt that's going to strangle us to death. That is the problem. Our problem is not over there. They said that Israel is a strategic interest for the United States. Interest for what? You can't say, oh, you're doing all the green stuff. You're trying to get off of oil, so they no longer a strategic interest. And also, when Donald Trump was in office, we was a net exporter of oil. So tend to the problems that's in the United States and stop using U.S. tax dollars for these crazy wars. Get to the point where we can put money back into the pockets of American citizens so we can make our own lives better. And another thing, American citizens need to reel in their politicians and stop letting them run them up the way they are.
Yeah, they're pretty much out of control and they're not listening to the people. So you got that right. Thank you. I think everyone's agreeing with you in the Facebook family. Craig says you're right. Zelda says we can always count on Pianki to break it down. And yes, and I did pull up, I found Helen Thomas. It's like 35 seconds. I'm going to play that for you. She was a journalist, I believe it says. And let's see what Miss Helen Gaff has to say. Let's see.
Any comments on Israel? We're asking everybody today. Any comments
Tell them
on
to
Israel?
get the hell out of Palestine.
Ooh. Any better comments?
Helen
Remember, these people are occupied, and it's their land. It's not German, it's not Poland.
So where should they go? What should they do?
They go home.
Where's the home?
Poland.
So the Jews,
Germany.
You're saying Jews go back to Poland and Germany.
And America and everywhere else.
Wow. Oh, well, I think she did put it rather succinctly and very honestly. So thank you, Bianchi. That was a beautiful example. Just as we started in the beginning with Gabor Mate sharing with us the horror, and Gabor Mate, also a Jewish man, sharing with us the horror of seeing what was going on in Palestine for 2 weeks. 1,000 times worse, he said, than what was going on in Israel today. And he cried for 2 weeks from what he saw in Palestine. So we're waking up the sleeping giants tonight. All that ignorance has to go, pour out, because we're learning the truth. And as she said they need to go, the Jews need to go back to Poland and Germany and wherever else they came from, and let the Palestinians have their land back. That's what we're realizing, some of us. And I wish it was that easy. And just to speak to what Bianchi said about our congressmen being so out of touch with the people, we have so many problems here in the United States. But guess what? We have a lobby system that the military industrial complex, we call it MIC, is running the show. Let's just say what it is. That is why our congressmen and senators and all the rest are not listening to us. But this show is all about waking us up, waking up the citizens of the United States. We should all be marching on what it. Just imagine if we got at least 50% of the population of each state to march on Washington and tell all those people who are warmongering and war hawks to go to hell and get out of our capital and let the people take over, because you're doing a poor job of running this country. So mic open for 706-202. Brother Kwame Sunhorse, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Sister Viata.
Good evening. Good evening.
Here, my brother. I ain't heard him in a minute on here.
I know.
Back to as usual.
Yeah, this
The
topic.
thing that I'm looking at, and nobody said anything. You know who Kamala Imhoff is?
Kamala Imhoff. That name doesn't sound familiar. Please let us know.
You sure not? Kamala Imhoff. EMHOFF.
That sounds familiar. Is it Kamala, like the vice president?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So
Kamala Imhoff is the husband of Vice President Kamala Harris. He's a Jew.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
The first husband, Vice President, that's who his name. And he has, her Jewish spouse.
Right.
And so what we're seeing is, and the other thing we're looking at, what religion is all of those Ukrainians, refugees coming into this country?
Probably Jewish.
Correct. And Evangelica. And who do we see on the backing up these politicians, these Evangelicas? See, we're looking at this thing. And the other thing, those buildings, you see all those explosions and guns and shoot. Where ain't no manufacturing over there of guns? Where do they get the weapons? The same thing that happened was the part of when they came there, that was Palestine. And when they turned around and the Israelis got backed by the United States and the British with weapons and funding to be able to overthrow, because they were refugees. They let them into Palestine. And the part that you're looking at, they overthrew the Palestinians and said that this was their land, and they made themselves call it Israel. Israel is still connected. The border's Egypt. Egypt is connected to what continent?
Africa.
There you go.
Why aren't they saying? They said Middle East. It's not Middle East. That's the continent of Africa.
Right, right.
So why are we being, misled, bamboozled? And the part of it is that we got to look at the whole picture. And the part for the most part is the Israeli military force is funded by the United States.
Absolutely.
This is why we send billions of dollars over there, and we're now sending our police force or military police force to be trained, their chiefs, and be training from this military army called the Israelis.
Yeah. Yep, they're all
and the other part that we're looking at and looking at this, okay, now, if they saying that quote unquote, the key word is war. If you have war, the people there are what? Refugees.
Right.
They won't let them into other countries, so what are they going to do? They got dual citizenship, some of them, and some of them don't. They will get on the plane and come to America, and the refugees that come into America that have skin that look like the people that run the White House gets funded, gets housing, gets health benefits, but the immigrants will not get that. The state has to come up with ways in providing for them. See, this is the trickery that they're doing with this whole thing, war, and then you turn around here and immigrants. This is the way in which they're getting to like Bianchi was saying. The thing that was doing was sterilization. They want to make this back to America being back, change America back. This is whiteness. And who is backing this is the bankers. Who controls the banks here in America? You got J.P. Morgan, you got Chase, Bank of America. All of that's controlled by the Jewish. Who controls the media? And what we get information is all controlled by who? Those people that have the Star of David.
And you've got I'm learning most of the people serving in Congress and House of Representatives are also Jewish, or quite a few.
Yes.
Yeah. So our government is just one-sided for sure.
Religion is the key. Religion is the key fact that we're having holy wars.
Yes, absolutely.
These insurgents having holy wars with each other. They created them just as they created ISIS. The weapons that they leave in these countries and the funding of weapons, and who is the people on the stock market that's benefiting from investing in the weapons and the biological warfare that they're doing with the shot. Which one do you get shot with? Shot with something that somebody manufactured called a gun, or drones or missiles, or you get shot with what they now have is aerosol vaccination that they can spray anywhere they want to. Jews.
And we want to make it clear that our friends and family in Israel and Palestine are not the enemies, and they're not. We're not speaking of any hatred about our friends and family there, because we all, especially if you have a social media account, you're going to have friends. Most of us have friends in every country in the world.
Could I add to this? I would ask your listeners, go and look up a book. It's called Black Power in Palestine. Do you know during the 60s, the Panther Party and all of these revolutionary parties in America was key working in Palestine, their country?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Black Power in Palestine. Black Power in Palestine. The Panther Party, all of these even King was dealing with Palestine, not Israel.
Right.
Even when Idi Amin Dada, who they say was another Hitler, when him and Golda Meir was trying to convince them he realized that she was a criminal, and he didn't want no more dealings with Israel. He said Israel's is criminals.
And our brother Craig is also commenting here about what you're saying, and brother Craig says, let's see, let me get here. Brother Craig is saying, let me put him up. Intergenerational trauma and politics don't mix. Thank you. It's like the worst mix. You're not kidding about that. And that's what we've got. A bunch of our people in Washington D.C. are mixing that, and that's why we got a bunch of psychopaths and narcissist individuals. All about them and not about the people. And he says at Kwame, Middle Eastern folks are showing up out here around ceremony a lot lately. Wow, that's interesting. Middle Eastern folks. I wish you could elaborate on that, Craig, for us. If you want to call in, I'd love to hear what that's all about. And then he says there's innocence on both sides. Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Here's a video I want to play, how Western leaders and media are justifying, just so we continue to get a truth aspect on every part of this conflict. Let me go ahead and play this video about how our Western leaders and the media justify the genocide that's going on in
This
Palestine.
is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Last night, the Israeli army ordered half the population of Gaza, 1.1 million residents, to evacuate their homes within 24 hours from northern Gaza to the south, in what many Palestinians fear is the start of a second Nakba. The UN said the mass transfer of half of Gaza's population would have devastating humanitarian consequences. This comes as Israel's bombed Gaza for 7 straight days, killing at least 1,500 people. Joining us now, Noura Erakat, Palestinian human rights attorney, associate professor at Rutgers University, author of Justice for Some, Law and the Question of Palestine. She's speaking to us from Philadelphia. Noura, if you can respond to this order and what's happening in Gaza.
Good morning, Amy, and thank you. Your reporting has been an oasis in a sea of warmongering across mainstream media, for which I have deep contempt at this moment. They have mobilized almost every racial trope of savagery, barbarian. They have built on Islamophobia and the infrastructure of the war on terror to create a common sense, logical conclusion that war is inevitable and whatever consequences come out is the fault of Hamas, thereby further blaming the victims for their own killing and massacres. At this point, we have to understand that there is no military solution. There has never been a military solution to this. Hamas cannot be eradicated. As we've seen right now, Palestinians are being killed, pulled from out of the rubble. We have not given them hope. I saw a young girl staring in trauma at the screen, her entire family decimated. What will happen to this young girl in 20 years? What will we tell her? That Israel had no choice, that this was your fault, and now your future is to continue to be stuck in an open-air prison? There must be hope, and that hope lies in a political solution and in the responsibility of the international community to dismantle an apartheid system, to dismantle prolonged military occupation, the longest in the world, to lift a debilitating siege that has condemned Palestinians to slow death. This is a human-made disaster, a catastrophe, according to the World Health Organization. This is not a crisis. It is a humanitarian catastrophe. If we are to create a future, it has to begin and end with a political and diplomatic solution.
We have this update. Palestine's Ministry of Health said 7 Palestinians have been shot dead by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank today. 500 Palestinian children have been killed in Gaza, and at least Hamas is saying that 13 of the hostages have died in the Israeli airstrikes. These are hostages that Hamas took from the Gaza border. Your response to all? It's devastating, Amy. All of us are watching this, but one of the things that we've been emphasizing is that although what we're seeing is devastating, we've also been laying a pathway out of it. While international human rights organizations and Israeli human rights organizations came to near consensus in 2020 that Israel oversees an apartheid system, a crime against humanity, what is the greatest crime that is sustaining this ongoing structure of violence, there should have been mobilization to impose weapons sanctions on Israel, to impose a diplomatic solution, to force Israel in order to dismantle this racist colonial structure that has basically condemned Palestinians to permanent subjugation. It is the failure of the international community to mobilize that has now produced this outcome. It is all of our responsibility. There is blood on all of our hands. And now the way out is not a military solution. We have to de-escalate. There must be a ceasefire. There must be a recognition that Hamas, unlike these awful comparisons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, is actually a nascent sovereign of the Palestinian people who has only targeted Israel, that gives them the right to use armed force, so that right is not qualified. That right is not, unqualified. They cannot use it however which way based on ongoing trauma and violence, but it must be recognized that as a nascent sovereign, they are representing a Palestinian people struggle for freedom. And as we've seen from the broad Palestinian public, institutions, civil society organizations, other political parties, they have all insisted that responsibility for this lies at the feet of Israel. The Haaretz editorial team has also said this lies in the responsibility of Israel. This is not about finger pointing, nor is it about bean counting the dead. There is tragedy on all sides. But if we are interested in not only ending this particular crisis, but of also achieving a durable, truthful, long-lasting solution, we have to go beyond this moment to dismantle the structures of violence that are sustaining it and creating these.
So that's a longer video on YouTube, Western Leaders and Media Justifying Genocide Campus. But I want to hear from Craig, I believe this is Craig who's called in, about the Middle Eastern folks who are actually in his area. 701-680, is that Craig?
Yes, good evening.
Welcome, my
Thanks
brother.
for having me, Sister V. I wanted to, how's it going?
Great. How about you?
A little while ago, somebody mentioned something about dual citizenship for Israelis / Israeli Americans. I wanted to tell just a little bit, real quick account of my own story. Coming from a place like South Bronx, New York City, I grew up in the 70s in the Bronx, where our tenement buildings were owned by Holocaust survivors. And I came up during a time called the fire years, where a lot of what they used to call Polish slumlords would burn us out, blow up the boilers, collect the insurance money, and take it over to Israel with this dual citizenship.
Wow.
This was all throughout the 70s. And they were leaving these behind. Sometimes they'd be left to the kids. And then the kids would also, they'd go overseas to Israel, live like kings, let the money make itself, and hold on to these properties. And now, after all this time, these people are just now beginning to come back. And what I wanted to mention, fast forward, my spiritual journey brings me out here, looking for family and stuff like that out here in the Midwest. in the Dakotas. And back in 2017, I'll never forget it. Back 2017, we had this ride. It was a memorial ride to commemorate the hanging of 38 Dakota men. And it was called the Dakota 38 plus 2 Memorial Ride. And I had gone out to go help and assist and kind of caravan and follow along with the ride because I was a part of it. And there was a guy there, he was from Israel, and he had been traveling with a friend, as ironic as it is, from Germany. He had this friend from Germany that also lived in Israel, believe it or not. They both did. And he had all this equipment with him to record the ride. And this had been going on for about 5 years. And I questioned him about it, because it just seemed out of place. And what he told me was for the last 5 years, the elders had allowed him permission to film the ride every single year for the last 5 to 6 years.
Wow.
But one of the things that I noticed, he wasn't just filming the ride. He wasn't just interviewing people. He was also filming locations on the reservation. He would go off to a certain segment or district and film it, each one, and then film the ride, which took place probably from November to about December 26th, which is the last day of the ride. Now, I questioned him about it. I had a cousin there. His name was Eastman, cousin by the last name of Eastman. I'm like, who is this guy? We don't record stuff like this. It's what we call sacrilegious. You don't just record spiritual events like this.
Right.
And he kind of, it was just weird. It was strange. And the next thing I know, the next day, the guy from Israel, he comes running up to me. He says, I don't know what's wrong with these elders. They seem to change their mind. They're not letting me record the ride this year. So something must have been said. My words, they must have reached somebody. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you do with the footage when you take it back home to Israel? He says, well, I show it in a movie, in an auditorium in Tel Aviv. I'm like, for what? To what end? For what purpose? Oh, just educational purposes. And he didn't really go into it. He was very ambiguous about his intent and why he felt the need to do this every year for 5 years in a row. And then it got me thinking about the Jewish money in the banks that fund certain programs across many different reservations throughout the United States. And, my paranoid mind, I'm like, okay, here we are. We're dealing with issues like blood quantum and everything. Not trying to make this about us, but we're dealing with issues like blood quantum and the fact that we might lose these reservations any day now because of things like blood quantum and get pushed off, kind of like a second removal, and forced into the cities on vouchers. And then what are we left with? And there's all this space because Israel, as a nation state, is getting too big. They can't afford to support their numbers. And this is why I think they went after Syrian oil not that long ago. They instigated something with Syria as excuse to go in and try to maintain a stronghold over Syrian oil. Because in order to control and run a nation state, you need money. And I don't know, prayers out to victims on both sides, because there are no heroes in this. As far as, from what I can see, from where I'm standing, Tunkashila bless them and protect them because it's just ugly.
Right.
It just really is.
Yeah, it's
it
hell.
Really is. I just wanted to chime in, and there seems to be more of a presence from people from that part of the world out here in this area where I live now. And it's interesting. It's very interesting. the same time, kind of, you know, I'm looking at it and I'm going, you know, like, what are you doing out here? It gets to 50 below out here. What are you doing out here?
Now, that ride you're
That was
talking
it.
about, does that take place on
90 seconds.
on horses?
The ride does take place on horses. It's over. The ride is not going to be taking place anymore. It's this past winter. That was the last one. And the founder, the man who was given instructions on the ride and what to do and when and where, he passed away. His name was Jim.
60 seconds.
That was his name. And when he passed, the dream went with him, and so did that stat, because there was a specific stat that was made for that ride, and they just put it up. So the ride is done. It's over. They're not going to do it anymore.
I saw,
It's kind of like how it is out here.
yeah, I saw a documentary on that. I was totally fascinated. How can they ride those horses in that severe weather? Can you tell me, how do they do it? How do you ride on horses in that really severe cold weather?
Niacin.
Oh, okay.
Niacin.
Wow.
Niacin for the blood, lots of clothes.
10 seconds.
Wow. So are they
Yeah.
they taking it every hour or something?
I'm sorry?
Were they taking it every hour or once a day? How often did you have to do?
No. Some people carried it. Some people just, you know, they did it al natural with nothing in their system. But there were people coming from all over the world, New Zealand, Australia, you name it. They'd come travel from everywhere to go on this 330-mile ride.
Right.
But lately, you know, during this past season, there have been people like Syrians showing up to Sweat Lodge, and just, you know, at different like sun dances and stuff like that. Just it's weird.
What do you think is drawing them there? Are they looking for healing and therapy?
Hard to say. No one knows what their intent is. All you could do is like give people the benefit of the doubt when they do show up.
Right.
And find out.
Right.
You know, that's over time. That's all you can do. And just like watch and listen. But the guy, I'm gonna speak candid here. The guy that showed up at our ride in 2017, I absolutely did not trust that man. Because it's one thing to film the ride and then take it back and show it in the form of a movie or whatever, but the whole entire reservation, like what's the intent there? What's your intent in doing that? Why do you need footage of the whole entire reservation?
Yeah. Okay.
You know, you could tell he was descended from, like I said, refugees from out of Europe in 1947.
Yeah.
And I meant to say that was a documentary shown to me in the 6th grade in elementary school at Community School 129 on Mapes Avenue in the Bronx. We were shown an actual silent film going back to 1947 of refugees coming from Europe, and both Palestinians and Israelis in solidarity waving flags saying, "Welcome home, O Israel, we love you." And this was to the European refugees. So what happened in 70 years? Within that 70-year period to bring us to where we are now.
Well, I think what happened...
Palestine is practically non-existent.
Right.
What happened in them 70, 80 years?
Well, I think what happened was the spread of the Nazi mindset and the greed and the desire to take over again, as the Khazarian history is teaching us. Wherever they go, they want to conquer and take over. And then there's this military industrial complex that's ruling and reigning for just greed purposes. It's what we and the pharmaceutical, all these corporations which are run mostly by we know who, and the greed is out of control. As Bianchi and we're learning here, it's out of control. I want to encourage everyone to call. If you don't do anything else, call your congressman, whoever, and tell them we want a ceasefire now. It's time for the people to take back the sanity. Call it and let your voices be heard any way, shape, or form in this country to let them know we don't approve. Stop being compliant. Stop being complacent. That's why they keep doing what they're doing. Nobody's saying anything. But now is the time for us to speak up. And thank you so much, the brothers again showing up, Mikael and Kwame and Brother Chris. Thank you all so much for voicing, Craig, for voicing your opinion, your knowledge, and your wisdom. That's how we overcome this ignorance. We're going to overcome it with the truth of our experience that is teaching us how to love one another, how to respect one another. And tomorrow, join Zelda for, recognizing triggers. Okay, she's got a show tomorrow on triggers and transforming and recognizing. So don't miss that tomorrow at 7. Everybody have a great week and share the love and share this show, the information that we're sharing today with people who are walking around thinking that we need to drop more bombs. Please share this show. That is, military is not the solution. They're only going to make more money and act more insane, and the richer they get. So bless you all for being here. Share this information and have a great evening. And we're going to say goodbye to our global family. We are a global family, which makes us all one. We can't drop bombs on our brothers and sisters anymore. Sorry, not doing that. Have a great evening and a great week.
We've come to the end of our show today, but you can hear every show in the archives at www.blogtalkradio.com/the-female-solution. You can also hear today's show on the Female Solution Facebook page. Go to www.facebook.com/the-female-solution. Leave your comments about today's show. You can always reach me on my website at www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com. Watch our TV shows, listen to our radio shows, order our books, and be sure to get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussion. And to our global family listening from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, Sheshe. India, Zanyaba. Japan, Arigato. Korea, Kamsamnida. Russia, Spasiba. Germany, Danke. Poland, Jean-Kugnon. France, Merci beaucoup. Spain, Gracias. Italy, Grazie. Egypt, Shukran. Ghana, Madasi. Nigeria, Eshe. South Africa, Nyabonga. Senegal, Geret. Kenya, Asante. Israel, Toda Rabba. Pakistan, Shukriyan. Afghanistan, Tashakur. Saudi Arabia, Shukran. Assalamu alaikum. And to all my yogi friends out there, namaste and sadnam and aloha to all you beautiful Hawaiians in Lahaina, Maui. Stand strong. Love you. Praying for you. Stand strong. We can do this. Have a great day. Evening.